everyone. I'm Faisal, I'm the CEO of Pi Labs. Thank you all for joining us today. We have almost 1,000 people tuned in from around the world, including staff and senior management from some of the largest real estate companies globally, including our own LPs, Great Portland Estates and Patrizia, as well as other major global real estate firms such as Blackstone and Starwood. For those of you who don't know Pi Labs, we're a London-based VC investing in prop tech across Europe. We've made 53 investments over the past 5 years across 3 funds. It's been an exciting journey as we've grown from a standing start in 2015 to a portfolio company gross value of over 400 million. Our vision is to act as a gateway between the traditional bricks and mortar real estate sector and the emerging and rapidly changing prop tech world. And we've worked hard over the years to create a global ecosystem of prop tech startups, mentors, real estate companies, developers, real estate investment managers, and other VCs, all of whom have helped us elevate our portfolio companies to the global stage. We're committed to investing in the most promising and transformative prop tech startups in Europe and help to scale them to enter international markets. Research is an integral part of what we do. We're a thematic and research-led investor. Earlier this year, we published a research white paper on sustainability in the built environment and have made a number of investments in this space. And ESG in prop tech remains central to our investment thesis. This summer, we published another white paper on the future of work and have actively been investing in technologies for the future of the workplace, not only this year, but over the last couple of years. And as we all know, this is especially pertinent today as the pandemic disrupts our lives globally. Our research and our investments go hand in hand. We invest in the topics that we choose to research and vice versa. Today, I'm very pleased that we're launching our research on the future of real estate investment management in partnership with the University of Oxford Saïd Business School. In our research paper, we've broken down this industry into its component parts, such as capital raising, investor onboarding, asset management, deal sourcing, and due diligence. And we've tried to identify the key challenges the sector faces today, as well as the emerging and potentially disruptive technologies that will shape the sector in the years to come. On that note, I'd like to hand over to Professor Andrew Baum, who alongside my colleague, Andy Saull, will present our research findings. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you, Faisal, and thanks everybody for joining this webcast. It may be that the right thing to do is to ignore technology and hope everything will go away, but it seems unlikely that that's the situation we're currently in. My name's Andrew Baum. I'm Professor of Practice at the University of Oxford Saïd Business School, where I lead the Future of Real Estate Initiative, which is where I was a colleague of Andy Saull until very recently. I'm also chairman of New Core Capital Management, which recently achieved B Corporation status. And B Corporation status balances purpose with profit. It may be a sign of the pressure on fund managers to come that we need to balance purpose and profit a little bit more. So I'm looking forward to presenting. Andy, over to you to kick us off with the presentation.
Thank you, Andrew Baum, and hello everybody. I'm Andy Saull. I'm the research associate here at Pi Labs, and alongside Andrew, I'm the co-author of Technology and the Future of Real Estate Investment Management. Just a small bit of housekeeping. There is a Q&A function at the bottom. So if you'd like to ask any questions about the presentation, please pop some questions in the chat. And we're going to have an hour's panel discussion after to go through some industry reactions to the report. And again, you can ask any questions that you'd like to panelists through that Q&A function, and myself and Andrew will be checking that regularly. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the paper, Technology and the Future of Real Estate Investment Management. Our motivations for writing this paper is we felt that there was a lot of reports saying why real estate management should change, but there was very few reports saying how the investment management industry was going to do so. So what we've done, as Faisal pointed out earlier, is we've broken the investment management process down into 2 key functions. The first is distribution, and this is the raising and retaining of capital, and it includes those processes you see below. The second function that we look at in the report is manufacturing, And this is to do with deploying and managing capital. And again, you can see those processes that we deem to be manufacturing on the screen. The report looks at each of these sections in turn and identifies the inefficiencies caused by current processes before highlighting real industry case studies and where startups can be applied in order to overcome some of these inefficiencies. And for the next 20 minutes of this presentation, we'd really like to share with you why we believe that if you're not already experimenting with the use of alternative big data, proprietary machine learning models, and emerging digital platforms, you are running the risk of becoming a clear casualty of digital transformation. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Andrew Baum, who's going to discuss the current challenges facing the real estate investment management industry.
Thanks, Andy. I mean, it seems to me, from my perspective, over the last 10 years, it seems to me that fund managers are getting into a challenging situation. And I think this started with the global financial crisis in 2007, when the damage to returns, particularly in value add funds through over leverage, created a bit of doubt in the minds of investors. A lot of investors took back control by forming investor consortiums. In the UK, we've had the local government pension schemes getting together, taking back a little bit of their control. We've had a decline in the natural supply of defined benefit pension schemes being replaced by defined contribution, which finds real estate less easy to deal with. So all of those problems are then coupled with fund formats, where the closed-end fund format is challenging for investment managers. Starting a business, then closing it down doesn't make a lot of sense. And yet at the same time, the open-ended structure is challenged because we've seen gating of funds, down valuation of funds happening in 2007, 2012, and again recently through Brexit and last year through the COVID crisis. So we've had a whole set of challenges to the fund structure as well as the natural business of fund management. And then on top of that, we have the more recent challenges that are epitomized by Greta Thunberg, challenging us all to create a better world, and fund managers need to take responsibility for that. We're going through a technological revolution, which some call the fourth industrial revolution, which kicked off in some weight in around 2008, and really got going in 2015, by which time we've measured 7,000 prop tech startups, and now we're seeing more and more money come into this sector, so that there are now significant sums of money, something like $50 billion invested in prop tech, a lot of which is very relevant to investment managers. If that weren't enough, we've now got investment managers struggling to justify their fees, given that returns are now going to be lower than ever before in a low interest rate environment. So we're now looking at core fund returns of often 4 or 5%, 1% of asset values against 4 or 5% returns is a big slice. And on top of that, we are worried about the retail sector has gone through a real significant decline thanks to online retailing. And now we're worried about the other core sector, which is offices. And so the sort of core property sectors are now difficult for us to think through. And we're having to think about alternative investment sectors to invest in. We've had this decline in the natural supply of investment and the way in which investor groups operate, often through clubs. And that's getting slightly harder to raise capital. And we still have this ridiculous world where fund managers get on a plane and travel around the world, meeting people, trying to raise capital, when pretty much every other industry is using some sort of online platform or the app store to market its products. Then we've got increased regulation. So KYC, money laundering checks, know your customer, all of that has cranked up since 2008. And as I've said before, the lower core returns is a problem for a lot of core fund managers. So from my perspective, both as an academic, but also as chairman of a fund management business, I see that there's a tremendous amount of challenge around at the moment for fund managers.
And compounding these issues, the real estate investment management industry is notoriously analog in its approach to everyday processes. Deals, as Andrew pointed out, are sourced face-to-face through personal networks, relying on rumour and market hearsay. We hand-sign documents to send in the post, only to then be scanned, uploaded, and stored in filing cabinets. It's reported that 60% of firms are still using non-specific software, so spreadsheets, think Excel, for reporting, 51% for valuation and cash flow analysis, and 45% for budgeting and forecasting. 45% of commercial real estate teams spend over 15% of their time managing data, while for 12%, they're spending over 25% of the time managing data. That's 12% of real estate firms are spending 3 or more months of the year managing their data. Fortunately, the report identifies some management models that are perhaps a bit more efficient than others, and I'll hand back over to Andrew to explain those.
So the proposition about vertical integration is that we inherit an industry in which, particularly in Europe and the UK, we've been used to long leases. So that the typical model for an investment manager has been to collect rent from occupiers through the medium of property managers and often asset managers as well, or joint venture partners, so that the relationship between the investor, the ultimate investor, let's say a pension fund, and the occupier of the building that the pension fund owns is very, very distant. And therefore it makes it very difficult for the fund manager or the investor, the ultimate investor, to provide a great service to the customers, the ultimate customers of the buildings that they are owning, because they don't have that direct relationship. And that gets even more indirect when we look at the speculative development model, so that we can then produce a system where developers build buildings speculatively. They sell them to investors who had no say in the design of the building. They're then leased through intermediaries to occupiers who equally had no say in the design of the building and have no relationship with the developer at all. And that contrasts somewhat with a vertical integration model, which is characterized by people like Prologis in the logistics market, by Greystar in the residential market, maybe to a lesser extent by Hines in the office market, where the development production process can be undertaken in the knowledge of how the operation of the business works. So if you take an example of a rental residential operator who can design rooms knowing how they are operated and used by occupants to produce more efficient buildings in the development phase, and then can raise capital more efficiently because they are highly credible operators of the space that they're working within, so that we see this increasing importance and credibility of the vertically integrated operator. And this is going to be a real challenge for a lot of investment managers. It's not to say that the only successful investment managers will have to be vertically integrated specialists. That's not the case. But I think it is the case that those who are vertically integrated will be in a great position. There's also room, of course, for the allocators who will find the specialist niches and seek out the operators who are very good at doing this and make sure that the capital is raised and sourced for those developer operators.
And as the need to get to grips with the operational aspects of investment management increases, it's my belief that the S in the ESG will become paramount. We're already seeing assets in the market fetch a premium for environmental accreditations. These are your BREEAMs and your LEEDs. However, when you consider that the average occupier spending is 90% on their staff salary, it's our belief that those assets that can actually improve the productivity, satisfaction and well-being of the staff will be those who will be fetching premiums in this new world. So the way we see this actually occurring is through two ways. The first is top down, and these are new accreditations. There are a lot of organizations in the market trying to create a smart building accreditation. So Wired Score are one of the more famous ones you may have heard of. And undoubtedly, these smart building accreditations will include measures of occupant satisfaction. So they'll include technologies such as predictive temperature control, air quality, and lighting, which have all been proven to improve the productivity and well-being of the occupants. So the first is the idea that these buildings who have these smart technologies will achieve a smart accreditation, and these technologies also impact the productivity and well-being of the occupants. The second is more bottoms-up user feedback driven through technology. We have a company in our portfolio called Office App, through you're able to book meeting rooms, and then the users of those meeting rooms are able to give feedback on how their satisfaction with that meeting room. And we also have a landlord agnostic daily office booking platform called Hubble. And through them, again, you're able to book meeting rooms and you're able to rate your experience with those meeting rooms. And so it's the idea that post-COVID, as there is an increase in working from home, as many predict, that we'll end up with this additional supply of office space. And the idea that this will open a huge opportunity for redistribution of demand through software. So we can imagine the Airbnb for office space. Now, for those that are skeptical about this, perhaps this proposition, WeWork recently announced across 160 locations in 11 US cities that they were doing exactly this. So they're dropping their membership model in favor of anyone, anytime bookings. So you can imagine that people will log in, and just as we do with TripAdvisor, just as we're willing to do with Expedia, we will be doing with offices. For me, it seems completely ridiculous that we would go for a 2-day weekend break and we would scour through all of the different information about the hotel that we want to stay in to pick the perfect room, the perfect price with the perfect facilities in the perfect location, when the offices we work in every day for years on end go without such scrutiny. And I believe that this will occur, it will occur soon, and this will inevitably bleed into asset value. However, before we can do anything with granular data and bottom-up information, there's a huge need for data integration and for software integration. We point to the silo, we point to the silo management structures that exist within real estate investment management and all the siloed software systems that have grown up around that. So what the industry is confronted with is actually disjointed data that doesn't move between software systems. The top reason why commercial owners have stopped using a given tech solution is that it failed to integrate with other tools in their technology stack. While the activities requiring most time and effort to manage data is manipulating and transforming that data and actually managing the data between the applications internally. So again, this idea that there is just not a flow of information occurring seamlessly as it does in other industries. We held 2 roundtables back in October with over 40 participants from leading real estate investment management firms. And what we found from those roundtables was quite telling of this need for data integration. And that's that there's a lack of knowledge about how data can be used. There are low incentives for data sharing. There's a mismatch between the data that investment managers collect and that which their LPs request. And there is a high sunk capital cost going on supporting legacy software systems as opposed to switching to emerging systems that are perhaps more efficient. Most importantly from these roundtables was the belief that there is a lot more that software could do if there was a better integration of solutions and data. While again we see both bottom-up and top-down attempts to create more efficient data integration, our belief is that a top-down industry data standard, such as that historically by Pisces and currently by Oscar, is largely doomed to fail. And that's because historically these standards have been unable to keep up with the pace of change in the real estate investment management industry. Much more likely, we perceive as a technology-driven bottom-up solution. And that is one that's able to use machine learning to identify the commonalities in different systems to generate a single data standard. It's the idea that we could train a machine to trawl across various different reporting structures and identify those common points, regardless of language, regardless of culture and how the industry in that country reports, and pull it into one single reporting streamlined software structure. Most importantly, technology will drive transformation, as is evidenced throughout this report so far. In the financial markets, it's believed that fundamental change will occur by 2025, driven by technology. The reasons the Americans are so skeptical, the report that this fact comes from says that it's perhaps to do with the relative maturity of US companies compared to their counterparts. However, it's my belief that the timing of the report released in 2018 would kind of coincide with the crypto frenzy in the US, where a lot of investors got burnt in quite high profile cases. So perhaps they're a bit more skeptical of technology when this report was undertaken, but still it's conclusive across the board that the majority of the world believe technology will drive investment management transformation. Specifically with real estate investment management, most predict technology will improve screening, it will favor the larger firms, and it will create better matching. We agree with those sentiments,